This episode is sponsored by viewers like you and Brilliant. Hey, Safer here. Everyone has a reason to hate California. They're the most populous state and therefore the most powerful. It really comes down to jealousy, which resonates with whatever particular qualms people have with the country as a whole. And that tells us a lot about such rivalries. So let's explore it in yet another episode of State Rivalries. This is not the only case of a state being hated by everyone else. Mr. Beat is covering why everyone has such a strange hatred for New Jersey. That too is fairly unique, so be sure to check out his episode too. I took a poll on Twitter to get everyone's takes, and have quite a list of specific things people hate about California. While I was at VidCon in Anaheim, I also asked several people why they thought so as well, including Jesus Christ himself. Sorry for the audio on some of these, I messed up the gain while I was recording them.
The thing is, not everybody hates California, they just hate Californians. California's great, you know. It's my Bethlehem 2.0. I used to live in Long Beach, actually. It's 72 and sunny all year long.
What about Californians makes people despise them so much?
Come on, that's a loaded question. And you know I don't want the heat to come back from that one, so I'll leave that one alone.
You can't forgive yourself after that?
No, sorry. My forgiveness only goes so far. It extends to mortals and mortals only.
Jealousy, that's the first word that comes to mind. Like, it's a great place. There's a lot of prosperity here.
Well, as a former Californian who used to live here and family left, I think of all the stuff that kind of pushed us out, which would be probably much more contemporary, but like the traffic is absolutely horrendous.
Because smog. It's so ideal, such an ideal place to live. So many people moved here. That's what happens with.
Well, Californians actually have a tendency to vote, or at least when put on a ballot initiative, to vote for lower taxes, but then they vote for people who raise all the other taxes that the legislature is allowed to raise. That, and the reason I can tell you as a native Californian who currently lives in California, the reason people, especially Californians, hate California is because it's so f***ing expensive.
Because it's such a desirable place to live.
Except even the poorest places of California have a higher cost of living than like the richest places in most other states.
Yeah.
It's in the Central Valley, you get all the worst parts of living in California without the benefit of the weather in the Bay Area or in SoCal.
The same weather year round, you don't have to worry about rain as much, but also like you have everything here. Like you have snow in the mountains, beautiful weather down by the beach. You have agriculture. People forget like the agriculture, how important it is for the rest of the country. Like without the Central Valley, we would be screwed as a country. And then, I mean, despite the high taxes, there's still so many people that flock here to innovate.
Our family were purposely looking for places where they'd have really good schools for us. I don't know if that's necessarily saying California has bad schools for public schooling, but...
Oh, they all think they're bad schools, but I think everybody thinks their local public schools are bad.
Do I need to do this?
No, I've got you.
I mean, not sure if it's fair to say everyone hates California, but I mean, to be fair, I grew up in Oregon, so we definitely have sort of a problem with Californians coming up, usually from like the Bay Area, and buying houses here and driving out the rentals. I just find it depressing. It's just like Strohs and Open Scroll and all that, but it's hot. I just don't really like visiting California that much unless I have a good purpose, like
because they secretly wish they were Californians. I'm a native Californian, born and raised here in Orange County. I have 4 great-grandparents that lived here. People are just jealous, I think, because there's mountains over there, there's beaches over there. You can go skiing and surfing in the same day. We have perfect weather all the time, great food, everything. So everything you can want is here, and it's just sort of a chilling place. That the politics in California are one direction of center, and many people are another direction of center, and so therefore it's not super surprising that some people have prejudices.
Oh no, it was super peaking. Oh, that's bad.
when we were talking?
Yeah. Oh no, that's really bad.
Oh, is it an audio issue?
Yeah.
Oh man. The infrastructure is terrible. The roads are too wide. They all have an insane amount of traffic on them. And then the NIMBYism. NIMBYism, yeah. The not in my backyards. This place has the worst homelessness in America, and it also has like the worst housing policy. And those two things go like hand in hand. You know, like homelessness is a result of housing failure. And when you look at like California and like the way that they build things, you know, they just like restrict building housing, and so they end up with tons and tons of homeless people because people don't have a place to live. I'd say there seems to be like a lot of elitism about the way that housing happens, and so like it's like housing isn't seen as like a thing that people need. It's seen as a thing that like people achieve. You know, like seeing it that way, you know, like people do need to live someplace, you know, and like people are upset about there being a homeless population. It's like if you're upset about this, then you have to like make the trade-off of building housing.
California holds a lot of weight in this country because, I mean, it's the economy of a whole country, and they have a lot of political power. And culturally, it's a big scene. And, you know, in kind of modern United States, a lot of more liberal movements probably come out of here when you think of San Francisco, again, or LA or something like that, and what culturally comes out of those areas. So it's pretty divisive because I hear all the time, I tweet about something, I'm going to California, and they're like, oh, I hate California, and the whole list of people are not Californians. Yeah, people feel like, I think California is like bullying everyone else, and they think they're better than everyone else, and they're ahead of the curve on a lot of things, and nobody likes that.
So you could say that they're jealous. Everyone had their own answers. As you can see, we've got a lot to talk about. Thanks to my patrons and today's sponsor, Brilliant. Especially since Team YouTube decided to age restrict my last video. I refused to acquiesce to their banality. Luckily, Brilliant actually supports educational content. It's a unique learning website that helps you understand science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I kinda attempted to avoid these topics by becoming a historian. Yet, my research actually requires some sophisticated mathematics to calculate historical homicide rates. So it's kind of important that I can brush up on my math with Brilliant courses. I found the one on the history of mathematics particularly useful. Something about combining history and math makes it more intuitive for me. So you go through each module where they give you some puzzles to solve surrounding the works of famous mathematicians, such as Nicomachus, Brahmagupta, Al-Khwarizmi, Girolamo... I'm not pronouncing any of these correctly. Girolamo Cardano, and Ada Lovelace. It's a helpful way to learn, and obviously there's a ton more, including contributing courses from Real Engineering and Kurzgesagt, which are pretty cool additions. And they're always adding more. So go to brilliant.org/thecynicalhistorian or click on the link in the description. The first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Thanks, and on with the show. Jealousy of California's power runs so rampant that it has inspired a recent myth. They claim that there is an exodus of residents fleeing the state because of any number of reasons. After all, there was a net loss of 1.5 million domestic residents from 2010 to 2020. Never mind that California gained 2 million residents overall, despite the outmigration during that period. Don't look at the fact that half of all US venture capital is spent in California. Pay no attention to DC, New York, and Illinois having higher rates of domestic outmigration. This myth also has a specifically racial undertone, because much in-migration has been of foreigners, which made Hispanics the plurality population of California by 2020. Foreign immigration virtually halted during the pandemic, hence the decrease in population for the last couple years. But it is clearly returning as immigration patterns restart. It's true California lost a seat in Congress, but that's simply because other states grew faster. Conservative media deliberately peddles this myth, revealing just how jealous of California they are. The prevalence of this myth shows exactly why this episode is necessary, for everyone outside of California feels like they're in a rivalry with that state. California became the most populous state in 1962, overtaking New York, who had been the largest state since 1820. Being the largest, California became the focal point of US culture, politics, and economy. In the process, it became more and more of a blue state. The hippie counterculture morphed into the new left there, becoming the primary mover of the Democratic Party. At the same time, 2 Republican presidents hailed from there, both of whom helped shape conservatism, especially Reagan, who brought neoliberalism, the religious right, and neoconservatism together, completing the 3-legged stool of the new right. But California remained a solid blue state after 1992, hence why it's often called the left coast. I'm working on an episode to explain exactly that. As such, people who detest liberal national politics often blame the state of California. The grandstanding of politicians from there makes that even more prominent. After all, there's been a ton of rather ridiculous laws passed there. My favorite was when they attempted to ban plastic straws, which resulted in several venues making their lids into spouts and using more plastic than they would otherwise. What's a better metaphor for California being a nanny state than them requiring adult citizens to drink from sippy cups? Less ridiculous is how the state has used its greater power than other states to push for denial of federal laws on immigration and marijuana, directly flouting conservative agendas. California politics affect the rest of the nation, which is especially galling to Republicans. Even stranger is California's referendum system. They have a form of direct democracy where ballot propositions may be voted on in general elections, creating new laws if the majority of voters pass it. Getting initiatives on the ballot simply requires signatures from a percentage of voters. That means any number of measures can get passed, often very contradictory ones, making legislating the state quite hectic. This was a progressive measure from 1912, which hoped to give more power to everyday Californians. Obviously, many folks dislike this system, especially since it's spread to other states. But it actually originates from Oregon, not California. So direct democracy, starting in California, is simply incorrect. The states bordering California feel her influence far more than others. Nevada and Arizona share a 1922 compact over the usage of the Colorado River's water. SoCal benefited the most from that. Phoenix and Las Vegas grew throughout the century following that agreement, making the allocation decidedly anachronistic. It doesn't help that California overpowers any attempt to renegotiate it either. Ignorant Americans often blame Nevadans for Lake Mead's decline, despite them only getting 4% of it. In numerous other instances, California overpowers her neighbors to gain greater access to natural resources. Nevadans in particular have a long history of despising California. The border has been a source of constant controversy. That diagonal line was unclear, leading to numerous disputes, which wasn't solidified until 1899. It even led to a series of conflicts and a few shootouts over taxes in 1863, known as the Sagebrush War. There's still troubles there, with California even spitefully putting what Las Vegans know as the 3 middle fingers of California along the border. These solar towers were purposefully placed in Ivanpah to push many environmental effects onto Nevada. It doesn't help that the Silver State's gambling is heavily dependent on the Golden State, even directing the course of the development of the Strip. Southern Oregon has its own long-standing conflict over the border. Counties in far NorCal have often voiced a desire to join into a new state they call Jefferson. First proposed in 1941, they feel sufficiently different, particularly in terms of politics, from the rest of California and Oregon to form their own state. You can still find people using the iconic double X flag to signify their support for this position and complain about their lack of representation in Sacramento. Much like the Jeffersonites, many Americans think they're belittled by the power of California. This is conspicuous in Texas. Numerous Texans believe they will eventually overtake California, though at current rates that would take about a century. Texan inadequacy makes them often declare that their rivalry is with California, but much like the New Mexico-Texas rivalry, that is in only one direction.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are.
Of course, in Texas and numerous other states, they are dealing with a large number of Californians either coming through or moving there. I myself am one such transplant. I was born in San Luis Obispo, but mostly grew up in Las Vegas. Moved back to get my MA from Cal Poly, and then moved away to New Mexico for my PhD. I'm a 5th generation Californian, and now a double transplant. Nevadans are quite happy to siphon Californian tourists for casino attendance, but rather detest them getting too far out into suburbia. Some also complain that movers change the politics of wherever they go, which is inevitable since they're Americans. Much like any entitled foreigner entering spaces they are unwelcome, this gets quite annoying. There's just more Californians than any other state, so they are more prevalent with these annoyances. Such tourists and movers often exemplify the subcultures endemic to the Golden State. It's not only the biggest economy of the states, but the cultural capital of the US. Since it houses Hollywood, that's the center of so much. It's not just movies, but basically all media, from television to pop music. Obviously, people have numerous issues with that. Celebrity worship, elitism, pandering, establishment, lies, and reinforcing any number of harmful narratives are things Hollywood not only espouses, but often created. Everyone has something to dislike about that.
California's great, you know. It's my Bethlehem 2.0.
Black men seem to look uncivilized when on the screen. You've got to take your analyst along to see if it's fit to see. Whatever happened to Randolph Scott has happened to the industry.
Similarly, our thriving internet culture is ultimately centered on Silicon Valley in the San Francisco Bay Area. Tech bros are certainly a type, which I'm sure many people find grating. Along the same lines are surfer bros and valley girls. Like, surf culture has this slow draw and laid back attitude, and, are just kind of beach bums. Whereas valley girls from the LA basin have this extraordinarily annoying feminine twist that sounds like they're ditzy and sarcastic at the same time. Of course, there's the hippies, which is totally still a subculture. They very much centered on California, and I don't think I need to explain why so many revile aspects of that. There's other ones, like the weird pizza you can get at California Pizza Kitchen. Yes, broccoli is a topping there. Ugh. Obviously, all of these can be bothersome. But perhaps the most maligned California export is suburbia itself. Urban sprawl certainly is not unique nor original there, but SoCal is the poster child of it. The area especially grew in the post-war golden age of capitalism, which centered car infrastructure. You can go from the San Fernando Valley down to San Juan Capistrano without ever leaving the suburbs. It's just single-family housing and highways the whole way. Trying to change the zoning for multifamily homes brings out the NIMBYs, as in, not in my backyard. Another terrible California export. These folks halt any attempts to change their neighborhoods, making it difficult to build better cities. Highways are another problem. Everyone knows how terrible LA traffic is, and that's certainly a reason to despise California. Though I'll also point out that leading up to the Bay Bridge is actually the worst traffic in California. And they only got the smog problem fixed recently. Being stuck idling during rush hour there is exceptionally aggravating thanks to higher gas prices, since California has high petrol taxes. Such taxes are the norm there. The Golden State needs to extract its gold somehow. Despite Prop 13 in 1978 limiting property taxes, California has some of the highest in the country. Though surprisingly, the estimated overall tax burden is only 9th largest of any state. The combination of NIMBYs, Suburbia, and the Nanny state makes housing prices extremely high, hence why so many folks are moving away. They simply cannot afford it there. I'd love to live in SLO again, but the apartment I rented there goes for twice the rate I got from 2014 to 2017. It's a genuine crisis. But building more housing is a difficult issue. California's resources are strained to the breaking point. There's basically a perpetual drought there, thanks to agribusinesses' wasteful usage, like the fact that it takes 5 gallons of water to make a single almond. LA as a whole only uses a third of what almonds do throughout California. But in either case, adding more residents will strain these resources further. As housing goes further and further into the forests, the ever-present wildfires are licking at communities. The 2018 Camp Fire killed 85. My grandparents used to live in one of those houses, though they've been gone for a couple decades. Either way, wildfires are getting worse because of global warming, water overuse, and urban sprawl. Sometimes the smoke from Californian fires can change the moon red as far out as here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But wildfires are a problem in all arid regions of the US. So yes, there's a lot of reasons to despise California. Some are out of their control, others are quite unreasonable, even imaginary. But all eyes are fixed upon the Golden State. Jealousy is an inevitable outcome from those on top. So we can all find something to hate, but that isn't really about California, is it? Because they're the most powerful state, we find something we despise about the nation as a whole. Our anxieties, fears, and annoyances reflect that. It's quite a unique rivalry. But to see a different rivalry, be sure to go and check out Mr. Beat's video. You really have to do that exactly when I start speaking, huh? California, uber alles. California, uber alles. You want it? You want it? Go get it. We've got a lot. Morale?
Sinking. 1, 2, 3.
Cooperation. King. Meow. King.